Hello and welcome to episode number 2 of Conversations with My Father. Hopefully you all took a lot from episode number 1. If you haven't seen it, it is now live on YouTube and on Spotify. So please head over and have a little look. Any sort of feedback we would greatly receive, hopefully positive, but if there is any negativity, gratefully received. There you go. We would both very much appreciate that. The title of this episode, as you may have already seen, you just came up with in the kitchen.
Yes, pretty much. It's all
very
words, 3 words beginning with C.
All very much Ron Seal-esque, as you said last time.
Yes.
It does what it says on the tin. So coffee, croissant and cancer is what we are going to discuss today.
Not too much on the coffee or the
croissant, although they're very nice.
Yes, I've started mine already.
You have started yours already. Have a little go.
Whilst you're chowing down on that, I'm going to make one final apology because I think in the first episode I apologised too much. So
you did actually.
I'm going to
apologise
one last time for apologising, and I'm not going to do it again. I'm just going to go with who I am and
own it.
Yes, exactly.
Good. I have just realised as well, I don't want to be too much munching.
No.
So
that's why I started mine.
Good idea, because that may come through on the microphones. The odd drink is fine.
So what do you want to know?
Straight in. Well, I've got a few things written down. I would like to give the viewers and anyone who has been directly or indirectly affected by cancer our story, Dad's story, but ultimately our story as a family. Share that with you all, and hopefully you will learn from that. There'll be some really good takeaways from it. And everyone, I feel, everyone in life, no matter who you are, where you are, you will be affected by cancer, whether that be directly or indirectly. You will know of someone who suffers from it, and hopefully you won't be one of those people that suffers from it. But sadly, Dad has been through it and is still battling it. I kind of wanted to go right back to the start. When did it all start, and how did that first diagnosis make you feel?
I'll just go back a year, because the first diagnosis was in the spring of 2013, and 2012 was a remarkably good year. And I know through the 63 years that I've been around that good things and bad things don't last forever. And 2012 contained the Olympics, the Queen's Diamond Jubilee.
On the river, we were.
Yes.
Yeah, it was amazing. Pageant.
Mum and my 25th wedding anniversary.
Was it 21?
Phoebe's graduation, I think it was, in that year.
I'm doing a big bike ride that year. That was my Sevenoaks to Lake Como bike ride. There was a lot that happened, I remember that year.
And it was a magnificent year. It really was fantastic. But I knew coming to the end of it that 2013 couldn't match up. I wasn't expecting it to, the pendulum to swing back so far the other way, but it did. So it was no great surprise to me that things didn't carry on being blissful and lucky and happy. But as Freddie alluded to in the last episode, my changing jobs saved my life. Because moving from one firm to another, from one firm that didn't have a formal health check procedure to one that did, meant that I was checked automatically for various ailments that affect men of a certain age. And in early 2013 I had my checkup, and my PSA level, prostate specific antigen, was more than twice the upper limit that the medics find acceptable.
And that's just quickly, that's done just through a standard blood test?
Yes.
Okay. these
So
sort of things are
they're
highlighted.
tested for lots of things, but
Yeah. Okay.
this particular one stood out as
Yeah.
a high reading which needed further investigation.
Mm.
So that result caused me to have further checkups, and it's always been a matter of grim humour when it comes to men getting their checkups, because it involves the medics using their digits where in one's fundament, and
Your vocabulary.
it's an well, I found it an unhappy experience, but
What's the joke you've?
no, I can't.
You can't say.
No,
Okay, you
it's
can't say
just
that.
not on a broadcast like this.
It's a very inappropriate joke that Dad has.
Yes, but it's
We'll leave it
important
for
to be
another
able to
time.
be humorous about these
This
things.
is true.
And I was told that there was an enlarged prostate in situ, and further tests needed to be done. And do interrupt if you've got any questions.
Well,
at
yeah,
any point.
because
Give me a chance to.
that initial have some croissant.
Yeah.
That initial moments when they said that to you, was that so they did the examination and they said that straight away that we want to do further tests. So that initial knowing that prostate cancer, I'm assuming you knew at the time that prostate cancer, I'm pretty sure is correct, that it is the biggest form of cancer or killing people in men. That's that for men, and then breast cancer for ladies. I may be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's correct. Or it's certainly very, very high up.
It's
So
very close to
you
the
would
truth, yeah.
you would know that if you were going for a prostate examination and they say we want to do further tests, there is a moment in your head where you're thinking SHIT.
Yes.
What's going on here?
Yes. And prostate cancer and in men and breast cancer in ladies is generally a fairly close link. And my mother died of breast cancer, having had 2 mastectomies in the 1970s, 1980s, and she died far too young at 63. And one of my little aims in life was to try and outlive her, which I did in August.
You've done it now.
Yes, I have done it now.
Do a little bit longer though.
I hope so.
Be nice.
So when the diagnosis came through of possible prostate cancer, the oncologist was very good in trying to keep my hopes and anxieties level, and saying it could easily be an infection, so only a temporary matter, and you may not have cancer, but we've got to conduct the tests and be sure about it. So I went into hospital for what is described as a template biopsy, which is the sticking of many needles, again pretty close to where the sun doesn't shine, to take samples of my prostate. And this enables the medics to get a measurement of the severity and aggression of the cancer cells, and B, how frequent they are.
So this was test number 2 after.
This was test number 1.
So test number 1, right? Okay.
And
prior, but this was after the blood test.
Yeah,
yes. Yeah.
So the results that come out of that test, the PSA test and prostate biopsy, enabled a reading to be created, which is called a Gleason score. And there are 2 parts to that, both marked out of 5 for frequency of cancer and aggression of cancer. And I scored 9. Now, normally in a test at school, I'd be pretty happy with that. There's only one person I know who got 10 out of 10, a former colleague of mine at work who's been incredible in his energy and determination to keep going, which he still is. And I have huge admiration for people who can manage to continue performing pretty close to normal when they've got such a diagnosis. Anyway, my score of 9 out of 10 was not greeted with whoops and cheering and fist pumps, because it meant I had to have an operation, and the score showed that not only would my prostate be removed, but several lymph nodes and, more importantly, nerves were removed around the outside, just to be on the safe side.
Now that at that point, that
Yes.
was when it must have sunk in that you had cancer.
Certainly did. There
That
was no doubt about that at that point.
those, you know, hearing that word, or those words, "you have cancer," must have been incredibly hard to process, because you always hear these stats of, I feel like is it 1 in 2 people will get cancer in their life?
Well,
I think it's
1
very
in 3, but
it's close to that.
yes.
And you just, how I think this, you just assume that it's not going to be you, or you might know
Yes.
someone or whatever. You don't live your life thinking I'm going to get it. So that moment must have been very overwhelming, to say the least. Can you remember that exact moment when you heard those words?
Yes, but I'd been primed for that sort of news, and that's part of the process,
Right.
of dealing with it and psychologically handling it without declining into a wobbly jelly. You've got to stay strong and draw upon reserves of resilience, and deal with it.
I do feel though your generation especially, I feel like it's becoming less and less, but I feel like your generation, especially in men, they have a very stiff upper lip, kind of don't show their emotions as much as maybe current generations do, and we're encouraged to, for sure. And you just bottle it up inside, and you think, oh, it's just another hurdle to get over or overcome. And were there points where, I mean, this was 2013, wasn't it?
Yes.
Now I was at university at the time. I went to uni from 11 to 14. 2011 to 2014. So this would have been in my penultimate year when I heard the news, and I do remember it being a very, very tough time in that I was away from home for the majority of it. Bert was around, Phoebe was around, both my brother and my sister. I'm pretty sure that was
Yes,
right.
it was
Yeah.
correct, yeah.
And a lot happened in a short space of time with you being diagnosed. Grandma was diagnosed with cancer, and which she's now overcome, thankfully. And Twiglet dying, our dog.
Yes.
Now I know that sounds funny, say a dog dying, but she was a huge part of our family, as a lot of you as dog owners or pet owners will know. It hits hard, and when all of that comes together, it was that feeling of, you know, when bad things come in threes. I very much thought that was the case, and it was really tough for me being 20. Yeah, I think I was 19, 20 at the time. To take that on board, be away from home. I was at uni in Swansea, and it wasn't too far, but it was enough distance to not be able to just pop home for the weekend. And to manage my emotions through that time was a real challenge. And I think as well, I was of an age where I also too did bottle it up quite a lot, and I don't remember having many conversations with friends or university friends talking about my struggles, what I was going through. I just thought, oh, your dad will be fine, because a lot of the time I'd call you up at home, or we'd speak as a family, and we'd be very positive about it, because that was what we wanted to try and convey.
Yes.
But little did we know that it was quite severe. You caught it, is it right? You caught it pretty late.
Yes, that's right. And I didn't really feel that I had the typical symptoms of prostate cancer.
Well, that's
So I didn't feel the need to go and get it checked out independently off my own back. And so therefore it was very, very important that it was caught when it was. I say 6 months later on, and it would have been much, much worse. But catching whatever cancer it is early improves the chances of successful treatment manifold. So it's one thing that I'd like every listener to take away from this, male or female, is think of someone who means an awful lot to you, who is 50 years old or more, and make it your specific, gentle but encouraging and determined task to get them to check up for prostate cancer. There is absolutely no rational reason why you shouldn't do it. And catching it early, what would you prefer? Catching it early, having the treatment and it being successful, or not catching it, the cancer continuing to grow and becoming untreatable and causing an outcome which is very far from ideal. So please do try and take that away from this podcast, that there is something that can be done to help those who you love, who may not have the determination, the courage or the knowledge to get themselves checked out. So
I think just on that note, on that point though,
yes,
as you said earlier, it was completely by chance. It was part your job change had there was a compulsory medical you had to do, so you didn't go out of your way to get checked.
I didn't.
So therefore, certainly people like myself who am self-employed, I would have to go out of my way to get checked, unless I went and changed jobs, and that was something that was that was required. So yes, I think it is very, very important to make the most of that, and certainly whether it be NHS or private healthcare, do what you can to go in and have some checks done every now and then, whether it be every year or every couple of years, whatever. I also have a client of mine who lovely guy who I've trained for about 5 years, and he has now overcome his battle with cancer. He was 29 or 30 when he was diagnosed. Very fit, healthy young guy, and just developed. I remember one of the sessions he came in and was training with me, and we were doing something quite tough at the end of the session, and he wasn't himself. I could tell he was just quite tired, and I was thinking, him and I were both trying to work it out. Why was he tired? Was it lack of sleep? Was it lack of good food, nutrition? Was he hydrated enough? All these sorts of different factors that I will ask my clients if they're not feeling 100%. However, none of them really matched up, and I was then like, okay, sleep on it, and hopefully you'll begin to feel a little bit better. But he just didn't, and then went in and got checks, and turned out he had cancer, and it was very much it was later on in catching it. So it was very, very fortunate that he did. Now, my point being there is Dad was 53 when you caught it, and pretty healthy, fit guy back then. You were, you didn't know there weren't any side effects not side effects, symptoms that you were experiencing, and certainly my client had a few little symptoms, but nothing that was thinking, oh, cancer. So please, as Dad has just said, if you are even if you're feeling just a little bit off or whatever it may be, and it's over a prolonged period of time, do go and get a check. More often than not, it's probably nothing, but it's worth going and just having peace of mind and getting that weight off your shoulder. And I know I have been guilty of not doing enough of that over the years, and I know now, having had my father go through your prostate cancer, there is a likelihood or a higher chance that it may come down through generations, and your with, as you said, your mum with breast cancer as well. So I feel like there is some sort of hereditary gene maybe with cancer. I don't know, but it's something that, having experienced it with my father, it's something that I'm definitely going to keep on top of and try and make sure I can catch if it is something I do have in the years to come. Touch wood that I'm okay. I wanted to build on that and talk about our family reaction, because obviously it's very, very hard for you as the individual who is suffering. However, as we are such a tight unit of 5, we all take it on, and we go through the good times, the bad times together to try and kind of share the pain.
Yes.
Something I did want to touch on, and something I've noticed over the past 10 years, is that a lot of people, friends and family, and whoever knows us and knew what we were going through, would always ask, "How's Dad?" And it's the go-to. It's very normal. He's the one with cancer. And of course, it's the right thing to ask. However, it was often just that. And Mum, especially, because I want to just say this to her over the podcast. I've told it to her in person, but especially now. She took on a huge amount with Dad going through that. She became, or has effectively become, a bit of a carer at times. And I think people can often look past how important Mum's role, or the other partner's role in this situation, is, if you are married and still together, whether they are your other half or whether they be family around you, and what they're taking on is also something pretty big, and they need to be considered and spoken to and just checked in with every now and then. And I did have some amazing friends that did ask me and so on how I've been. But when you are such a tight unit, we share that. We share in the pain. And Dad has been amazing with getting on with it, and just dealing with it in the best way possible. A big reason I wanted to talk about this today was to ask him certain questions that maybe I haven't done so far. I think you have been pretty open about it all, but because it's been over a 10-year period, I was 19, 20 when I found out, and maybe we didn't have as many deep, meaningful conversations back then as we do now. And you may not have wanted to share as much with me as you may do now. So that was just a big point, and I would definitely want people to take away from this as well, that how important it is to take into consideration the others that are involved indirectly or directly through other people suffering, whether that be cancer or anything. Just to check, how are you, and a genuine how are you, not just a passing one. And I don't know if you would agree with that, or hopefully you would.
And I think it's very good that you've brought it up, because the impact of prostate cancer is one of those that affect both parts, or both spouses, because of the side effects, and how it leaves me as a male, has a very significant impact upon Mum. Irrespective of her brilliant caring of me, which wouldn't have enabled, if had it not been there, I don't think I would have been here now. But you're absolutely right, because whilst Mum has physical fitness, the effort that she has to put in to compensate for my being unable to do things is immense. So it's very much a team effort. And I'm incredibly lucky to have that support.
I think, just as you said there, how it affects a man, and side effects, some of you saying things like loss of hair in certain places, and just I don't want to go too deep.
Yeah,
but
sometimes people ask me
there are
in the summer when I'm wearing shorts if I shave my legs.
Yeah.
For heaven's sake! And there are
Chris,
more
yeah.
pressing
For
and
aerodynamic.
important matters than shaving my legs.
Yeah.
No, I don't.
It's what Olympic swimmers do, I think.
Oh,
to become more
bollocks to that.
streamlined. So Dad's just prepping for the next Olympic.
I do not shave my legs, my arms, or anything like that. No,
still got
vanity
some-
hasn't quite caught up that far.
But there was, just touching on that again, there were side effects or other side effects. I remember you saying that you had to take antidepressants
Yes.
as a form of medication. I remember a time when I came back home and your sheer volume of medication and pills you had to take each day was frankly astronomical. It was enormous. It was almost like it was every day. It was an event that you had to go through.
Yes.
Swallowing these pills, and that can't have been easy every day doing that. And as just said there, a side effect was having to take antidepressants to try and get through that.
So yes, dealing with a side effect caused by one set of pills meant that I had to go on another set of pills to cope with that.
Yeah.
And it's, they're easy to describe as uppers, but they don't provide an artificial level of happiness. They just take me back to a level of normality, which I was beginning to lose. I'm not dependent on these pills at all, but if the doctors say that I should still have them, then I'll still have them.
Can you remember the number you had to have each
I'm
day?
on 7 in the morning and 3 at night at the moment.
Now, but at the peak of it, I feel like it was up at 20 odd, wasn't it?
Oh, I don't think it
One
was
point.
that much, but
it was a lot. It was a hell of a lot.
Part of the process.
So these are all things that maybe other people don't hear about as much now, but are also a big constant battle for you. What has been for the past 10 years, and it is still something. Dad has just been through, well, as of 3 months ago, I think you just finished your chemotherapy, 7 months worth of chemo, which absolutely wiped him out. In this entire 10-year period of Dad battling cancer, I've never seen him as weak, as helpless as you were during those 7 months, or certainly the last 3 or 4 of the 7. Because I remember the first dose, you came back and I think you were okay. It felt it was all right, and you were kind of like, oh, this is a breeze. What's everyone going on about? Chemo's easy. And then the second one, I think, hit you quite hard.
It did, just after Christmas last year. And this was, again, a big time. COVID was still very rife. We had to kind of look after you and make sure and protect you, being more vulnerable. And that Christmas, I remember when we're pretty sure you got COVID, even though the test was saying you didn't. Negative, no.
You had been through a hell of a lot, and you were bedbound, and it was tough for me. I remember having to go and help you up to bed, help take your clothes off and put them on in the morning, and it was, for a son doing that to a 62-year-old father, was not
old 62.
It's
really.
It's not. You've you've got your 50 and you're pushing through onto 100. You're still a fair way off. So you've got plenty more years to go, and it was quite a profound moment that has stuck out in the past 10 years for me, and it's not something I want to do much more of. And so it was tough. The chemo for you was a huge battle, and something I should say, your part of chemo is Dad had to go in, and you'll be able to tell this better than I do, but you had to wear a cold cap to try and look after what hair you have left.
And it's worked, everybody. I've still got a bit of a barnet.
As you'll all have seen, hopefully by now, our logo for the podcast, which we've very kindly had done by someone on Fiverr over in America, gave Dad, I think, actually a better head of hair than you actually do.
Yes, but it made it look as if someone had cracked an egg over my head and it was all dripping down, and it looked ridiculous. Some of you may think it still looks ridiculous, but there we are.
But you had to go in and wear what you described as a bit like a rugby cap. But
yes, and I can pick it up a bit, the story, because when one is having chemo, one of the, of course, the side effects that people see most often is loss of hair on the head. Well, all over the place, really. And I was given the option to wear what they describe as a cold cap, which is pretty accurate. I mean, it's one of those Ron Seal moments. It does exactly what it says on the tin.
Not wrong.
And the purpose of this, so it is like a scrum cap, and it's got tubes coming in and out of it which supply from a machine incredibly cold gel, which closes up the hair follicles and protects them from, stops the hair from falling out. Now, if I can describe the experience, which was, for the first few sessions, incredibly painful. Those amongst you who enjoy skiing, I hope this comparison is helpful. If you decide, you get up early, you want to get the corduroy, and you take the highest lift, chairlift, which is cold, and you're hunkered down and trying to keep warm. You've got your helmet on and goggles and gloves and so on, and you get to the top and you think, I know what I'll do now. I'll take off my helmet and my goggles and I will dive into the nearest snowdrift head first.
As you do.
And I will lie there for the best part of 2 hours, and I will consider this to be a happy experience. Well, that's what it was. That's what it felt like to me. The cold for the first 15 minutes was excruciating, and I would sit there with my head in my hands over the blooming scrum cap, trying to get through it. And after 15 minutes or so, you did. You got used to it. And
Is it? I think the closest I can try and think of something similar is having a slush puppy and getting, or something really cold and eating it too fast, and you get brain freeze.
Yes.
Is it like, obviously, but it's coming from the outside as well, outside in? Is it that kind of
yes,
pain?
It is.
That's horrible.
Absolutely. I confess I haven't had a slush puppy for many years, if ever.
Yeah.
But that's the sort of thing, brain freeze, very much so, and it's just such a bloody pain. Anyway.
But it's worked. Well, we hope.
To some
Dad,
extent it
prior
has.
to this, Dad had huge long locks and
I did
luscious hair. Almost could have done L'Oreal adverts.
No, I
and
couldn't.
and now actually it's the way it is. So you should do a before and after for your scrum cap time. But yeah, a huge thing you've gone through with chemo, and fair play to anyone who's going through this, because it's so tough from what you've said, from what you've told us.
Yes.
But it has kept it at bay.
It has, and hey everybody, I'm still here.
Yeah.
But what it's done is stop the spread. So we are at stage 4, which means that there are metastases into the bones, which is not a great outcome, but it's not growing there, and my other vital organs are fine. And I'm conscious that we've gone from sort of first gear to fourth gear so we've come to the end, or
yeah, we'll go back
treatment, but that we may not be able to squeeze it all into this
episode.
Well,
we'll go back a few years, because I wanted to. So her dad is now retired from work, not from, well, you did do very well at work, but you haven't retired because you've made millions and millions and millions and you feel very, very comfortable. You retired for health reasons.
Yes, I couldn't justify continuing to take a salary when I couldn't work a 5-day week. So I think I did the honourable thing. And
well, we definitely agree. I think you were commuting in every day, or you were doing 5 days a week, and it was a good hour. 40, hour and a half, hour and 40 to hour and 40, 45
door to door.
To get in to work there and then back, and that's a long old day when you're not feeling 100%. It's a lot to ask. So making that decision and retiring from work was in our eyes a 100% the right thing to do.
Yes. For health purposes and mental purposes, it was absolutely right.
Now, I did want to touch on this. It's a little bit by the by, but your retirement led to you receiving one of the most incredible gifts anyone has ever given you. So you could thank cancer for that, actually. Dad left Rathbones back in 2018. And all his colleagues and friends chipped in to buy Dad a flight in a Spitfire, which is something of your generation, your parents' generation, and hopefully our generation as well. We can fully appreciate the epic machinery that is the Spitfire, and to be able to go up in one of the few that are remaining and still functioning was a dream, I think, for you.
It certainly was. It was one of those bucket list things that I never thought I'd be able to do, because many years ago Spitfires were generally single-seater aircraft. But now at Biggin Hill, Goodwood, Duxford, there is a programme of bringing two-seater trainer Spitfires back into use and start earning some revenue. And the experience was utterly magnificent. And to those of you who have flown on commercial jets will be familiar with the safety drills of lights on the floor and exits there and there,
oxygen
masks coming down and so on. Well, the safety briefing for the Spitfire is raise your seat, open the canopy, undo your seat belt, making sure that you're not undoing your parachute at the same time, stand up and roll out. And I was so excited, I almost wanted the aircraft to get into difficulty so that I could do this. But a safety briefing like no other that I've ever had.
So you had to roll, there's not an ejection?
No ejection.
It is just
at all.
Roll, right.
You stand up and push yourself out.
And hope that you don't hit the back.
That is one of the... Yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely, and hoping that you're flying at a height that allows you to open.
So you had a parachute on sitting down, yeah?
Very much so.
Did you have a reserve parachute?
I don't know.
Not sure, okay.
I was just so excited.
I don't know. But it was incredible. Dad also, in addition, which I think was incredibly good value, paid for us as a family, the remaining four of us, to go up in a plane and fly next to Dad, which I think seeing a Spitfire in the flesh is special enough. Seeing a Spitfire fly over is incredible, but being up in the air with one and having your dad alongside you in a Spitfire that was
grinning
honestly
like
not much further away than we are right now to the camera. It was within 10 meters. You were so close, and we could see the whites of his eyes, the grinning of his teeth, and it was just incredible. And we were flying alongside, and he ducked underneath, came up, came back, and then did this incredible barrel roll, turn away, and then came back around and did a passing flyby. And we were going at about, I don't know, 100 mile an hour or so, and the Spitfire flew past at probably double that. And then came over this house where we had our extended family here up in the field, and Dad did a a barrel roll over the house, and
Yes,
just the most unbelievable day. And the reason I bring it up is because it was a way of celebrating you for your entirety of work. It was your colleagues' way of saying a massive thank you and a big send off for all that you'd done for them and for your clients, and a really special thing to do given what you had been, or you still are, going through.
Yes, it was very special.
So very much
lucky.
a silver lining to the otherwise quite large cloud.
Yes.
So there have been the 10 years has not been all doom and gloom. We've had some amazing amazing times, and it has allowed us to really make the most of times together as a family. And since your retirement, I think we've put more of a focus and energy into doing things together. Yes. As a five, and with others, and your time that you spend now with Mum is amazing. Being able to have that, dare I say, it's not a luxury, but having that almost second go at life, in the sense you've been given the warning by cancer saying life doesn't just, it's not all swings and roundabouts. It's there are times when stuff is really quite hard, but it's allowed you to make the most of things that you enjoy.
Yes.
And spend time with people that he loves, and avoid the people that he doesn't.
Well, it's a matter of grasping the opportunities, and carpe diem. I hear that phrase an awful lot. Live for the day, but seize the day. It's quite right, and having no regrets about doing things that I want to do, not putting off until tomorrow what I can do today, is energizing. It's great. And taking these opportunities without feeling guilty that I shouldn't be doing it, I should be more serious, is life enhancing, actually. But could I just go back to the big operation?
Do.
Which is described as a full radical, non-nerve sparing, laparoscopic prostatectomy, which doesn't really trip off the tongue.
Doesn't actually, no. It used to be a catchier version.
So there was a lot. I think I was under general for 3.5, 4 hours. There's a lot going on. But one of the saddest moments of my life was standing at the window of my room in the hospital as Mum drove away, and waving to her, and realising that I would, the next time I saw her, and every other time after that, I would not be a complete man. And when Mum had gone past, and I was, my hand was pressed against the window, it was all pretty pathetic, but
it's not.
I was sobbing, and I thought, come on, you can't go into an operation in this state. Sat on the bed, said, come on, pull yourself together, man. You've got to deal with this. There's no one else going to step in. It's like you have said to me many times, you can't pay someone to do your press-ups. You've got to deal with it yourself.
Your phrase as well, you've always told me of I think you got it from Churchill, of KBO.
Yeah,
keep buggering on.
And success is going from one failure to another without the loss of enthusiasm. And Churchill was remarkably good at that, given the difficulties he'd suffered politically. Anyway, this is not about Winston. So then went down, had my operation, and in hospital for 4 or 5 days thereafter. And came home.
Did Mum visit you during
Oh
those
yes,
times?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Many times. Oh, thank you.
That's all right.
And came home, and I was billeted in the spare room down here which was easy and convenient, and Mum was fantastic. So I had a catheter fitted, and this, it's part of the process, but it was kept in for a little longer than originally planned, and I developed epididymal orchitis, which in common parlance is badly swollen bollocks, and extremely painful. So I had to go back in and have an examination, and I found myself back at the Nuffield some 4 weeks after my operation, walking like John Wayne, because the gonads were getting in the way, if I'm honest. And so I went into the consulting room, where a man who I'd never met before asked me to lie down on the couch and to lower my trousers and my underpants to my ankles. He then gave me a rolled up towel to hold beneath my nadgers and to stop them moving around too much while he conducted his examination, which he did, applying some very cold gel and moving it around a bit, and then everything appeared on the screen, and he said, yes, they certainly are swollen, aren't they?
Well, that confirmation.
I could have told you that. Well, indeed, that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
And then he noticed on my notes that it was my 54th birthday. So he said, oh, many happy returns, by the way. And I rather
As
weakly...
he had your nadgers in his hand.
Yes.
Yeah, happy birthday, Chris.
And I weakly said, thank you very much. And what I should have said was this: I've only known you for 5 minutes. You are conducting a remarkably intimate examination of my reproductive tackle, which doesn't work anymore, by the way, in case you didn't know that. And you're wishing me many happy returns. And I'm lying here, tackle out, exposed to, or exposing myself to someone I barely know, and you're wishing me many happy returns. For goodness sake, man, I do not want many happy returns of this particular experience. Anyway, I was prescribed some antibiotics, which did work. The swelling went down, but when someone says, you must have really big bollocks, that's not necessarily a compliment.
Not what you want to hear. I, in a slightly different way, wanted to ask how it's changed you having cancer. Do you think it has changed you physically and mentally? Do you feel it's changed you more one than the other? Is it something that you have really grasped with both hands and just kind of accepted and said, this is who I am and I've just got to make do with what I've got now?
Physically and mentally. Physically, certainly. And the strange thing about this experience is that it's not the cancer that has caused me pain or inconvenience. I'm relying on the medics to recognise what they see on a scan result, whatever, to judge what the cancer's doing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the side effects of the drugs that have caused difficulty and challenges. And one of my oncologists, over the time that I was being monitored, which I still am, of course, said to me that actually you're going to have to live with cancer rather than without it. And the important word in that is live, which I continue to do, albeit physically quite a challenge, because the various drugs to reduce testosterone and hormones, because the cancer quite likes those things. So those naturally produced parts of me are suppressed, and of course this comes with side effects, and you have to deal with them. But it's a gradual process. So although I feel physically weak, and there are too many things that I can't really do,
but there are lots of things that you can
lots
do.
of things that I can, and I just want to say that there was a moment when I was still working, and we were invited to a talk by a Paralympian swimmer in our offices, and I thought, well, I'll go along and see what there is to listen to. And he said that he was an Olympic standard able-bodied swimmer before he had an accident which caused him, I think, to lose an arm, and he became very depressed. But his coach said, look, let's focus on the many, many thousands of things that you still can do, and set aside perhaps 100 things that you can no longer do. Let's look at Paralympic swimming. And to cut a long story short, he then went on to win a gold medal. And I thought, that's really good story. Just change the focus of what you're hoping to achieve, and think of the many, many things that you still can do. And that was quite an inspiration, actually. So mentally, physically, there are too many things that I would like to do but can't. I still hope that I'll be able to, given this.
But what you are able to do, and I speak on behalf of every single person that knows you, whether that's, again, directly or indirectly, you are a wealth of knowledge and positivity and humour, and to be able to sit here and do what we're doing right now is incredibly powerful for both of us and everyone that tunes in, hopefully, and will learn a lot from you. People tune into this for you. I don't think they really care much about me, and they
disagree with that.
But what you provide on a daily basis is something that hopefully a lot of other people can do, but I don't know many other people like you. And what you have been able to carry on doing and being is a father for me and my brother and sister, and a husband to mum, in an incredibly positive and amazing way.
Yes.
And life happens. People go through this. You're still here. You're still around. We're still able to have these conversations, and that's what we need to focus on, and not focus on, as you were saying, not focus on the things you can't do, but focus on the thousands of things that you can do. We know far too many people that have passed away younger than they should have done, and you are still battling away. You're still here. You're still providing endless enjoyment and good wit and humour for the people around you and that know you, and a huge amount of love and affection, which is more than can be said for a lot of other people. So, and for that, I can't thank you enough. So, I wanted to end on one final question, as we mentioned earlier, how the number of people that will be affected by cancer, indirectly, directly, is huge. And what would be your best bit of advice to those that are either going through something similar or will go through something similar in the years to come?
Well, the best has two pieces of advice, really, for two different groups. Make sure that people grasp the need to get checked. There's nothing to be, there's no downside to that process, because most people will come away from that process with a clear bill of health, and that is a really positive thing to know that, okay, you've taken the decision to get checked up and you fear getting bad news. Well, if you don't get that bad news, it makes you feel fantastic. If you do get something that needs further checking, the chances are hugely weighed in your favour, because the research and progress that has been made in cancer treatment in the past 10 years since I was first diagnosed is immense, and the chances of early treatment, which is non-invasive, is going to be likely to be successful. So if you haven't got any problems, even if you haven't got symptoms, just go and get yourself checked out. Whatever happens, it's got to be positive, and it will be. Now, for those who've been diagnosed, try and find out what the real prognosis is. I have found, both with private health insurance and moving on to the NHS, that the care and attention one gets once the diagnosis has been made is incredible. Quite frankly, the NHS have been brilliant, and where the organisation perhaps falters, it's the organisation, the hugeness of the NHS, which may not work quite as well. But when an individual takes control over one's treatment and sorting out a problem, by golly, they care. They really want to make a difference. And that is a source of immense relief. So how do you cope with it if you've got the diagnosis? Just find out, frankly, what the medics are saying about the diagnosis, and they're not there to paint an unrealistically optimistic picture. You need to know what lies ahead, what you can do to help yourself, and I think compassion is, of course, really helpful, and part of Mum and my way of dealing with this was to write a list of all the letters that begin with C, which apply to me. So cancer, of course, is one of those things. But my name, Christopher. So here are a few of the words that we've come up with that begin with the word C.
I hope there's not a four-letter one in there.
No.
Good.
So COVID and children and classic cars, champagne, cider, Chablis. Compassion, care, crying, courage, creativity, companionship, cuddles with Mum and anyone who wants to give me a cuddle. I'm
He's very good
recipient.
at them.
My cousins, dear family members, colleagues and my career, collecting things which I do far too much, model railways, stamps, champagne bottle tops, charitable work, which I think will be one of the subjects that we cover in a future vodcast. One of the most important C's to me is Cambridge United.
I was going to say.
Comedy, colourful clothing, chamomile tea, and crap, actually. There's an awful lot of crap.
A lot of crap in there.
So those are some of the C words that spring to mind when trying to deal with all this.
And I would like to add one as well, and is very apt to this podcast, is conversations.
Conversation's absolutely right, Freddie.
Because that's something I want to add on to what you just said. Your bit of advice is making the most of the people you have around you still, whether they're going through what Dad's been through or something similar, is to really cherish that time, and others see, that you have with them. And these sort of conversations that I'm having with Dad, we may not otherwise have had if we didn't put time aside to sit down and have a chat.
No, I don't think we would.
And that is incredibly powerful. So my bit of advice would be to those of you who are going through something similar is to make the most of the people that you have around you, and really spend as much quality time with them as you can, because life is too short. Who knows what's going to happen in the years to come, but we'll always look back and think, you know what, we actually did, we made the most of that, and we had an effing good time in the process. So
yes, exactly. No regrets.
No regrets. Now, we could go on, but I feel we should probably end the episode there.
Yes, there's plenty more to talk about, so we may
plenty
have to
more.
Have a version 2.
What should the viewers do now, Dad?
They should click on the heart and a thumbs up.
Thumbs up, yeah.
And subscribe, I think.
Subscribe. And any comments as well.
Yes, comments very helpful.
Very helpful.
I have had a list of questions from dear Francesca, which I will try and answer.
Some of them are brilliant topics just for a whole podcast, so we will. So anyone with questions, in Spotify there is a little link, there's a question for you guys, or a question box for you to fill in and ask if you'd like us to cover anything in particular. On YouTube, if you're watching that on here, then please leave a comment below. Any questions are more than welcome, and any constructive criticism as well is welcome. Be nice, and thank you very, very much for listening in and tuning in once again. It means the world to Dad and I. So thank you.
Dad and me.
Dad and me. Yeah, finished there.
See, the grammatical traditions still mean quite a lot to me, and I need to make sure that my offspring are aware of this. So he wouldn't say, for example, it means an awful lot to I.
No, I'm usually quite good with that. I just had a little slip up there.
It means a lot to me. So if you add someone else in, me, it matters a lot to Dad and me.
We'll do a grammar focused one for.
We'll do that another
time.
Take a couple of minutes. But thank you very much for listening and watching, and there'll be more to come next time. And there will also be, I think, room for a Christmas special.
Christmas special, definitely. We're going to go all out for that.
Yes.
For sure.
Because it's a time of year that I absolutely love.
Another C.
Yes, Christmas coming up.
Exactly. Thank you. That's over. Sorry, episode 2, over and out. Well done. Very, very good. Well done, you. That was really special.
Well, we've got a long way to go.